I was just in such a dark place that I didn't really want to talk about it. I didn't really want to have to go back into it and feel all those feelings over again.
I had a few complications, bleedings, infections.
I've had complications and I've had a hard time.
I did have some complications and I did have some, concerns that not everybody deals with.
I thought it would make me happier, and initially it did. Was that worth the constant issues I've had, the dilation I have to do for the rest of my life?
I'm having the worst time with dilation.
I was experiencing a little bit of dehiscence, which is basically when you are so swollen that the sutures that they put start to rip open. It was as bad as it sounds.
I had trouble urinating. I kind of walked around with it for a year before I sought help.
The reason I'm dilating twice a day is because if I miss once, it is so painful. I dread it so much because it's so painful.
I went to dilate again that night and I think that I moved a stitch. I don't know what happened, but something happened and I was in excruciating.
I started the puberty blockers at age 11 and hormones when I was 12.
She's one of the first to have undergone complete pubertal suppression and lack of growth of the skin and other tissues, which we rely on as surgeons to do this operation. I was just not expecting her to have a complication as severe as what she did have.
The wounds were definitely separating and she formed like a blister. It's almost like a blood blister.
As we were getting her onto bed, I felt something go pop. And when I looked, the whole thing had just split open. So the dehiscence on the outside, it was bad. She really was under so much tension that it created these large wounds. So we took a little bit of a skin graft from the other side of her groin, which we didn't use before, and I just put that in over the open wounds, repacked the vagina, and we covered everything up. Let the skin recover as much as it can. Skin grafts don't always work, and if that happens, then we would probably just do the skin grafts again.
Let me just take a picture too. Poor thing, you could be a porn star for all the photos you're taking. I have some concern that we can get enough mobility of the tissues that we can make the labial structures look convincing.
I really thought after this third surgery that everything would be smooth sailing, but now there's this whole hiccup. My pee stream is not quite going out in the right direction, and just recently I've been experiencing less clitoral sensation. I feel like I've already lost the aesthetics. Hopefully after this revision it'll look good once it heals, but if I lose some of my sensation and nerve endings, I might never experience an orgasm.
Every single child or adolescent who is truly blocked at Tanner stage 2 has never experienced orgasm. I mean, it's really about zero. And it's because they never in their lives are exposed to testosterone.
The past few months have just been so challenging. And it's just been such a struggle. 2 years ago, I was on my way to one of the greatest institutions in the world, but I was actually struggling severely with mental health issues.
All right, once it's serious.
I started binge eating and I gained weight and more weight and more weight. And now, almost 100 pounds heavier, here I am today. Dilation is a process that comes along with bottom surgery. Basically, you take this long acrylic object and insert it up your vaginal canal so that you maintain depth and width. It's really important that you do this because if you don't, your vagina will start closing up and it'll lose its depth and you won't be able to use it properly.
I have woken Jazz out of a dead sleep and taken the dilator and put the lubrication on it and said, here, you take this and you put it in your vagina. If not, I will.
Bye. Don't forget to dilate.
Ugh, exhausting.
It just doesn't stop.
It's okay. Give me a hug. It's okay. I know what you're going through. We've been there before.
No, so I'm the one doing it.
I know. You're your own worst enemy.
And I really want to have that clarity. I really want to understand myself and be able to read my own soul and what I want. And it's just very challenging. And I think I'm kind of breaking down a little bit and just want to feel like myself. That's it. I don't care. All I want is to be happy and feel like me. And I don't feel like me ever.
As my body has fallen apart in front of me, my joints constantly hurting, my vocal cords aching, watching as parts of me atrophy away before my very eyes. How can you look me in the eyes and tell me that a child can consent to being changed to an experimental medical industry?
I began my transition in California. It was when I was a minor that I was first affirmed to adopt a false identity. But now I am 26 years old and I am dealing with genital atrophy, urinary issues, possible sterilization, tremors on half of my body, back pain, memory loss, loss of my eyesight, and many more issues that I may develop as I age. My story is not an outlier or that of a failed transition, but the realization of the truth of this practice. If you look online, you will see many stories like mine. Looking back, I wish there was proper safeguards to protect.
Like many children and teens today, I identified myself as transgender for years. Everyone in my life immediately affirmed my new identity, either out of full support for it or just to stay neutral and not cause any issues. The constant affirmation solidified me in my transgender identity. No one meant to lock me into an identity that would later leave me broken, ashamed, and more confused than before. They were really all just being nice. But the social transition eventually wasn't enough, and I soon felt I needed to take testosterone. And when that wasn't enough, I had a double mastectomy. And when that still wasn't enough, I had a total hysterectomy, including the removal of my uterus, cervix, fallopian tubes, and both ovaries. There's no point of contentment during a gender transition. We get fleeting moments of euphoria, but ultimately one step leads straight into the next. And I thought that in the end I could really become a man, but all I became was a mutilated and abused version of my old self. Social transition is a big deal, and we're lying when we say that any of this is reversible.
I medically detransitioned this past year, hearing about the process of other detransitioners and even speaking to some people who are here today. It makes you realize that, oh, well, maybe this is not so rare as they're saying it is, especially when it comes to medical consequences. There was like a list of that, the incontinence, not being able to hold your bladder, not being able to sleep because of heat flashes that are painful. It's ridiculous thinking that a teenager should go through that. I know that I had a conversation with Chloe earlier this year about heat flashes, and that was the first time that I had spoken to anybody about like the itchiness and the uncomfortableness at night, and realizing that wasn't just me, and that's what you hear a lot. A lot of people will be like, oh, well, it's just you. I guess it just didn't work out for you. It's like, it's not just me.
I ended up getting facial feminization surgery. And shortly after that, I got approved for sex reassignment surgery. There was absolutely no pushback by therapists. They completely ignored comorbidities I had. I have internalized homophobia. They completely didn't even push back at all. They affirmed me, and gave me letters for the surgeries.
When I turned 18, I learned that I could obtain testosterone through informed consent. And in my experience talking to them, they kind of downplayed the risks. They really sort of focused more on the aesthetic changes that I will go through.
I went to Planned Parenthood like a week later. I basically walked in. I said, hi, I think I'm trans. They said, great, we're going to diagnose you with gender dysphoria, and here's your prescription for testosterone. You can get it the very next day. And I said, great. I didn't actually realize in my head what a huge fucking red flag this was.
I started off by getting a prescription for testosterone, and to do that, I called up Planned Parenthood because I'd heard they provided gender-affirming services. I thought I would have to go through some kind of process to get the testosterone, but instead what happened is I talked on the phone for 30 minutes with a doctor I'd never met in person, and I got prescribed testosterone over the phone.
Years old, testosterone was being injected into my anorexic body. This was after a single appointment with a WPATH certified therapist who asked me a few questions and told me that I was a boy. These vague questions included things like, do you dislike your period? Do you get along better with boys?
I went to a Planned Parenthood a few weeks after my 18th birthday. None of the clinicians were interested in what was behind my desperation to change my body. They told me that because I seemed so sure, they would prescribe the hormones that day.
I had sought assistance through my local LGBT center, and on my first appointment, I was immediately affirmed as a transgender woman. When I asked her why was I affirmed so quickly, she said she did not want to gatekeep me, and she had my letter to transition right away.
I believe I was non-binary. I struggled with severe mental illness and suicidal ideation. I had a trauma history. Being a girl meant I was vulnerable. This should have been a red flag.